It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview the New Hampshire Fisher Cats play-by-play broadcaster, Joe Weil. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, Brandon. I really appreciate it.
Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to work in professional sports?
Yes. Working in professional sports was always a dream of mine because I just am somebody that has always loved sports. It's sort of grown as I've gotten older in the sense that when I was a kid, I was obsessed with baseball. And even though I'm 28 now, I'm still obsessed with baseball, but I'm obsessed with other sports. I'm a huge basketball fan, football fan. And as I've gotten older too, I've grown to appreciate hockey and some other sports as well. So I always knew that going into broadcasting as a major in college and specifically broadcast journalism, I wanted to apply that into the professional world of broadcasting and not only the professional world of broadcasting, but sports broadcasting. And so I always dreamed of being a professional sports broadcaster. And I've been really fortunate that I've been able to get opportunities as an adult out of college and be able to pursue that dream and sort of fulfill the dream as well of broadcasting minor league baseball and some stops that I've had, but also the opportunities I've had on the air at places like IMG, Learfield IMG College, now just Learfield. It's had a couple different names throughout my time being associated with it or just working there. But also, you know, what I've been able to do in New England since moving back up here in terms of being able to broadcast college sports. So I've been really lucky. I've been really lucky and fortunate. And I just always knew that this was something I wanted to do because I've never really thought about doing anything else. Like I've always loved sports. I always knew I wanted to work in it in some setting. And again, just to be able to do that in any capacity is certainly something that I'm thankful for.
That's pretty amazing. What was your time like as a sideline reporter for the Boston Neighborhood Network?
Yeah, so that was one of my first experiences of broadcasting. And it was really one of my first experiences broadcasting outside of Boston University. It was actually one I was able to get through BU Connections. And what it was is that the Boston Neighborhood Network would put on a game of the week broadcast for basketball games across Massachusetts. And it was for schools that were pretty close to the Boston area. And so my job was a sideline reporter. And that was such a unique experience and a neat experience because it was really a chance for me to like prove it to myself that I could do it. Because, you know, I think you work within the realm of the sports radio side at a school while you're a student or doing just like a student broadcast, you're sort of gifted those opportunities because you are with the school. They're supposed to be created for you because you're a student, where this Boston Neighborhood Network experience and opportunity was one I kept getting invited back to, and it wasn't specifically BU centric. And I was able to do the experience. I got good feedback. Pat Flaherty was the man in charge of that. A really, really nice guy. And he was the play-by-play man, but he always commented that I was doing a good job. And that gave me a lot of confidence that maybe I can be successful in this field and do something in sports broadcasting. And it was just a lot of fun to do. And I'm very appreciative of Pat. I'm very appreciative of all the folks at the Boston Neighborhood Network. And just to get that experience under my belt as I was starting to transition into being a real adult. Like it was something I did my second half of senior year. And so I was about to graduate. I was about to go into the job market, and just to have that tape and that experience under my belt, and also having a little bit of confidence under my belt that again, an entity outside of school thought I was decent at this, you know, definitely meant a lot to me. And so I'm grateful for it. And you know, it's something I think that's still on YouTube. It's not my most refined, tape. I think my voice is probably a couple octaves higher than I kind of go on the air with now. But it's something I think back to, and I can smile about because it was a really fun experience.
What was it like working with the Patriots League as the play-by-play?
Yeah, so that was cool. And what that was something that was BU related. So when I was at Boston University, my junior year, I was the color commentator for BU women's basketball. And the reason I wanted to get involved with that was because of the productions that BU put on for those women's basketball games. It was pretty high end for being a student. And the guy that was doing play by play at the time, Nick Cope, he is now somebody that does great work on the West Coast in California. He works for UCLA. He's actually just on the Pac-12 network recently, and somebody that I'm a great friend, or that I consider a great friend, and he's a mentor of mine too. But he was doing the basketball broadcasts his senior year, my junior year, and he was a play-by-play guy. I was a color guy, and I knew once he graduated, that was an opportunity that I could take on and then get some play-by-play reps doing it on a so to speak network. And so to do that my senior year was a lot of fun. It was a good experience, and I look back on it now, and I think I could have done a better job with it, but I think the fact that I knew I could have done a better job on those broadcasts was sort of something that fueled me moving forward. And it wasn't that I wasn't prepared or anything like that. I just think that I still had some more on-air maturing to do. And I was just happy to be able to do stand-ups in front of a camera and work with great people and put on a production and sort of be the maestro at the head, being the play-by-play guy. My buddy John Michael Cedar was the color commentator, a guy that I was really close to in college and did a lot of stuff on the radio side at WTBU, which was our student radio station. So to be able to do those games with him was really fun. And it was just a fun experience as a student to be able to do something like that. And again, it was one of these experiences. It's like, okay, got this under my belt now. I can say I've had experience calling games on, a streaming network that wasn't just student radio. It was something that was viewed by, some more people. And, I'm grateful for it as well.
What was it like to get the opportunity and privilege to work with the Cape Cod Baseball League as the play-by-play?
Yes, it was a lot of fun. I actually just got a picture of the Cape Cod Baseball League. It's a painting. It was from my girlfriend's mom, because she knows how much I love it on the Cape, and the time I had with the Cape Cod Baseball League. That was a great experience. It was really funny because it was an unpaid gig. So I worked on the side as a sandwich maker at a deli in Woods Hole. So here I was, fresh out of college, and my first job, so to speak, was as a sandwich maker at a deli. But I was really there because I wanted to broadcast. And the reason I did that was just I needed some baseball tape under my belt. I went to BU and they didn't have a baseball team. I did some softball games, but I didn't have any radio baseball. And I knew I wanted to try to get into minor league baseball the next year. So I went to the Cape after I graduated. I was with Falmouth, and that experience was just so much fun. And it was a real great building block for my career in just being able to do baseball day to day and getting the reps under my belt, which was still something I needed. I think there are some people that come out of college and they're just like, they're so refined right out of the chute, going into the job market. And if I'm going to be honest with myself, I don't think I was the same way. I still needed to get some more reps. I still needed to, get my skill set to the point where it needed to be. And there was still a lot of work to do even after that Cape League season, but just doing that the day to day was so much fun, and being around a baseball team and to do that made me realize, okay, I really want to try to get into baseball because I really enjoy that experience. So doing it was a lot of fun. And on top of that, it also provided some cool opportunities. The experience that I'll never forget was they had a Fox College sports broadcast come to one of our games, and I got to do an inning on that with Ken Ryan, a former Major League Baseball player. And I was really nervous, but I think it went well. And again, I listen back to that now, and I'm much better at broadcasting than I was back then. But to do that and then get it under your belt and to not completely screw it up, was another confidence booster for me. And at the time I needed stuff like that to feel like I really belonged and can do this professionally. So the whole experience was so much fun. I actually just went back to Falmouth about a month ago and was soaking in Go Fuller Field and the experience of it. And I just kept thinking to myself, like, yeah, I'm so lucky I got to do this for a summer, as a 21-year-old with really no responsibility yet, and just broadcast baseball on the Cape and watch these college players that were among the best in the college ranks perform. It was so much fun. I'll never forget watching Kyle Lewis actually in that Cape League realm. He had a 2-run home run in a game against us, and it was against a pitcher that threw gas. And it's like, to now see him in the big leagues, it's really neat to watch. And it's like, yeah, I saw that guy when he was, I think he was a rising sophomore or junior at Mercer. So to be able to watch baseball in that type of realm was great. To be able to broadcast it was an absolute honor, and something I'm thankful for.
How is, of course, the Cape Cod League broadcasting that, getting your opportunity in the minor leagues with the Winston-Salem Dash?
Well, I think first and foremost, it got me tape. You need tape to try to get into the minor leagues. And with the Cape League experience, I finally had some legitimate tape under my belt. It wasn't great. Again, I still wasn't at a level where I would consider myself to be even anywhere near what I am now, but it was good enough tape to at least get myself in front of people to listen to it and be like, you know what, we could take him on as a number 2 broadcaster. So the way I was able to get the job with the Winston-Salem Dash was I was already in Winston-Salem the following fall and winter. I was a studio host at what was then called IMG College, now called Learfield. And I was a studio host for Villanova football and Villanova basketball, and also Gonzaga basketball. But when I was doing Villanova football games and studio hosting with them, I was placed several times next to the cubicle of where Brian Bush was doing studio hosting for the University of Michigan, which was foreshadowing a lot. One, my friendship with Brian, who was the lead broadcaster with Winston-Salem at the time, but also Brian's now the voice of Michigan basketball. So it's been cool to see him go on to great things, and somebody that I consider a great friend and a mentor of mine as well. So, but anyway, I was placed next to him several times, and I just would listen to him. I'm like, man, this guy's good. And then I realized he was the guy that was the broadcaster for the Winston-Salem Dash. And having lived in Winston-Salem for a little bit at that time, I really liked the town. I felt really comfortable. I thought if I could somehow latch on with the Dash, maybe I can turn living into Winston, a year-round thing instead of, pinging 6 months to 6 months between places. And so I went to the winter meetings in the winter of 2015. I got to meet a lot of great people. I interviewed for a couple different number 2 positions, or just got a feel for, what was out there. And then Brian was there. We had a chance to talk a little bit at the winter meetings. I think people at IMG, then called IMG, I always have to say this now, this qualifier, it's like, it was IMG then, now it's Learfield. But people in that building, I think, said good things about me to Brian from what I've gathered, which I'm thankful they said. So when Brian was hiring his number 2 position, that came into consideration. I think he looked at me and said, okay, he's never worked in pro ball, but he's got some upside to him. And very thankful he hired me. And as time went on, in terms of talking to some other teams, I realized that was the job I wanted, because, again, I liked the town a lot. I thought I could learn a lot from Brian too. And it was just a stroke of luck that I was in Winston-Salem for the fall and winter, and then able to, get that job, because then working with the Dash and being his number 2 later opened it up to me becoming the number 1 there.
What were some of your roles and responsibility as the media relations assistant with the Winston-Salem Dash?
So this depends on how much time you have, Brandon, because there were a lot. When you work in minor league baseball, there's a ton you have to do. So when I was the media relations assistant and broadcast assistant, I'll talk about the broadcasting first. So when Brian and I were on the air at the same time, I was the pregame, postgame guy, and I would do innings 3, 4, and 7 and 8. And I would know, so a part of the pregame show was getting an interview too on the field. So I would get an interview before the game from a player or coach. Now, the media relations side, I was in charge of helping with game notes. Brian would usually write the front page, and I would proofread his stuff, make sure it was all set, and try to correct any errors. Which a story he likes to tell people is my first game. I was so nervous, and I was like reading his front page for like, I guess probably like 20 to 30 minutes, making sure that there was no issues with it at all, because I'm like, I'm not going to screw this up my first day. And so he likes to joke about it with me now because I took forever with it. But along with doing that, I was in charge of creating the stat pack, distributing that to the coaches on both sides, and also creating enough for media members, printing out rosters, distributing that to the players or to the coaches on both sides, and then the lineups too. So that was all encompassing in the sense of I had to get everything ready before every game as the assistant, and make sure that media members and coaches were all set. Like if they were all set, I did my job right. If they weren't, I did my job wrong. So that was an important thing. And when you're working in that realm, it may seem small because it's minor league ball, but it matters to the coaches. It matters to the people that do come in and cover the team, whatever town you're in. So it was something I took on day to day whenever we had a home game. And then when the team was on the road, I'd help out with like cutting pictures so that we had enough pictures for the website, creating baseball cards, which was something that was sold by the Dash later on. So I was in charge of getting all the information correct for that. And I think the joke in minor league baseball is you just do other duties as assigned, and that was me too. So if I had to do something else, sometimes I helped sell tickets, and sometimes I had to be the mascot, and that was an experience in itself. You just do a lot when you're in minor league baseball. So when you're in it, you just have to be ready to do anything. And tarping is another one too. You have to be able to tarp, and you're doing it with the rest of the front office staff. So you're not alone in it, but you're going to be involved in that process as well.
What was it like to, of course, get the job with High Point as the play-by-play broadcaster?
Yeah, so I got to do some High Point women's basketball games early on in my time living in Winston-Salem, and that was a great experience too. Once I got the Dash #1 job, and I was actually a seasonal producer at Learfield. I had to kind of let that opportunity go just because I had a lot on my plate at that time, but I got to do women's basketball for about a season and a half, and that was a lot of fun. And I'm very appreciative to Kevin Burke, who was previously the women's basketball guy. He let me fill in on one game my first year living in Winston-Salem, and then he was at the time the Salem Red Sox broadcaster, and we struck up a conversation about the upcoming year, about High Point. And I just told him, I said, hey, I'd really love to help out again if you need me. And he said, there might be an opening the next year. I reached out to him via email in September of 2016 and kind of reiterated the same thing. Hey, it was great to meet you, get to know you. I just so you know, I'm interested again in helping out. And he said, well, again, there might be an opening. And that ended up being the case. He moved to the men's side and doing their games, and I got to do the women's. And that was another great experience because I got to be entrenched in a program. And again, it was an opportunity to gain some confidence, be around a team and feel comfortable around a team, and show my personality to the coaching staff and the players, and allow them to get to know me for who I was, and not just as somebody that just would drive in, do a game and leave. I wanted them to know that I was an actual human being that wanted to get to know their story and learn about them, and show that I cared, and then also bring it on the air. And so I was able to fill that role for about a year and a half, and it was great. It was great to do some more basketball, kind of take what I had done at Boston University on the women's basketball side, and then do it again for High Point. And I'm really thankful for that opportunity, and I'm thankful to the High Point people as well for gifting that to me. And I really, looking back on the experience, it was awesome. I wish I could have completely fulfilled the second year. I think I had a lot on my plate, and, thankfully they were able to find a fill-in for the rest of the year on that side, and, kind of finish out that year. But I always made sure to let them know, listen, I'm so grateful for the opportunity. I thank you so much for it. And, High Point's another stop in the road that I'm always going to look back on and say, yeah, it was really cool to do that.
What was it like to get to call national championship games in the NCAA for Learfield?
Yeah, so I didn't, and just to make sure it's clear to everybody that watches this, I wasn't calling them, but I was doing studio hosting for them. So when I was with Villanova that first year, as I talked about, I got to do studio hosting for the national championship game, which, if people remember the year they played UNC, Chris Jenkins hit that game winner. And there's actually a video on my Facebook page of me going crazy when they hit the shot. It was me and Paul Roper, who's a full-time producer at Learfield, and he was helping out with the game and sort of creating some imaging for it. And me and him just go insane when Chris Jenkins hit the shot. And I just kept telling myself, as a 22-year-old, to be able to like be on a national championship broadcast is amazing. Even though it wasn't me calling the game, Ryan Fannin did the game as the play-by-play guy. Whitey Rigsby was the color analyst. I wasn't in any of those roles, so I wasn't actually there. But just to be on the broadcast for something that historic, that meant so much to Villanova, and that shot too is always going to live on in lore. To just be able to have a small role in that broadcast was amazing. And I think what I got even more lucky about was the next year, I was on Gonzaga's broadcast, and then they make the national championship game, and ironically they play UNC too. Unfortunately, they couldn't win that one, but to be able to be on both of those in my first 2 years broadcasting, and again, to do one as a 22-year-old, the next year's 23-year-old was amazing, and it was really cool. And again, something I can always say I did. I was involved in some way in a national championship broadcast. You go back in the archive, I was on the air. It wasn't there. That's something maybe down the line in my career I'll be able to do. But the fact that I was able to do it as a studio host at IMG was awesome. And then, subsequently, I was lucky to be with Notre Dame and be their pre-post guy. It wasn't a national championship game, but it was a college football playoff game to get that experience under my belt. And that one was not nearly as close as the Villanova or Gonzaga title games, because Villanova won. Gonzaga played a pretty good game against UNC. They kind of lost it in the last minute. But then when I was on Notre Dame in 2018, they played Clemson, and that was a blowout. But so it wasn't quite the same. But again, even to be able to do that was pretty neat.
What was it like to, of course, go back to Winston-Salem in 2018?
Yeah, so, and I was always there. What was cool about doing Learfield is that all the studio hosting I did was centralized within the studios of Learfield, which are based in or some of them are based in Winston-Salem. Yeah, you have some in Jefferson City, Missouri. But at the time when it was just IMG, and then it turned into Learfield IMG and then Learfield, there are still broadcasts that are taking place within Winston-Salem. So what was great for me was that I was able to do Dash broadcasts. I was an assistant in 2016 and 2017, but I would go directly from that season to Learfield. So I would just go from calling baseball in Winston-Salem to then transitioning to studio hosting in the offices of Learfield, which was based in Winston-Salem. So it was great to just go from one to the next. I never had any time off, which was, as a sports broadcaster, you go into this field, you always want to make sure you have enough on your plate. It's something that Bob Lippman, who also does broadcasting for the Fisher Cats, has said to me several times, and it's right. Like you never want to have too much of a gap. You always want to have something. And I was really lucky as a young broadcaster to be able to always have something going on. And that was something that was provided to me through doing stuff in at Learfield. And then so going from that and then working, full time with the Dash when I transitioned to that, made it really easy, because it was a routine I was already sort of ready for and had been experienced about transitioning from college to then let's go back to the minor league season. And I was really thankful to get the full-time job with the Dash and, be entrenched in that and be a full-time employee and then get that experience of doing even more games. Because when I was an assistant, I wasn't always traveling, but when I was a full-time broadcaster with the Winston-Salem Dash, that was the number one at that point, I got to broadcast more often.
What was it like getting the opportunity to work with Holy Cross on the women's ice hockey and softball and baseball side?
Yeah, so that's been something that I've been really fortunate to have since moving back up to New England. So just to give people a little bit of background, I was broadcasting in Winston-Salem for about 4.5 years. My girlfriend, she was doing some travel nursing in the New England area. She's from here. So, we decided we wanted to try to make it our way back up to the Northeast. I'm from Jersey. She's from Mass. And I think we had both kind of longed to be up in this area. So my original plan for 2020 was to broadcast baseball with the Trenton Thunder and then sort of kind of figure it out after that, and with the goal of finding some on-air work in New England. And then COVID hit and sort of threw everything up in the air. And I was with the Trenton Thunder for a short amount of time. And then once COVID hit, a lot of people lost their job. I was among those people. So I decided, you know what, I'm just going to move up to New England and sort of figure it out. And thankfully I had been in touch with Elijah Gonzalez, who was at the time in charge of broadcasts with Holy Cross. And so once the fall and winter rolled around, I reestablished connection, and thankfully he brought me aboard and I was able to do some Holy Cross broadcasting. So I got to do some softball. I got to do women's ice hockey. And it was a Nesson Plus game. It was actually my first hockey game. I went to BU, this great hockey school. I didn't really broadcast hockey. It was something I wanted to just enjoy. But, moving up here, it's a skill set I want to have. So was really nervous to be thrusted into the action like that on a Nesson Plus broadcast, but it was fun. It was still a good time. And I'm glad. I always believe if you just get through it the first time and they don't fire you, you're going to be much better the next time. So you got to just
What was it like to, of course, work with the New England Hampshires?
Yeah, so with the Fisher Cats, that was an experience I really, and it's one that's still ongoing. So shouldn't talk about it in the past tense, even though the season, it gets closer to September, you're like, oh man, minor league season's sort of coming to an end. But the Fisher Cats role that I have, I'm really grateful for, and I want to thank Tyler Murray, who is the voice of the New Hampshire Fisher Cats, for just bringing me on board. Tyler's a BU grad. He was the only other Boston University alum that I knew of that was in the minor league baseball world doing broadcasting like me. And he was a couple years older than me, and he's a fantastic broadcaster, great guy. He's somebody that you really want to try to emulate because he's successful in this business, and he's just a really good broadcaster. So I reached out to him about possibly helping out this year with the Fisher Cats. And I had decided that I wanted to stay in the New England area. I wanted to build some roots here. And I reached out to him about helping out. And, thankfully he carved out a role for me to do some broadcasting with the Fisher Cats. And I've been able to help out with some road trips and coming up in September, I'm going to be doing some home games. And I'm just really grateful for it because I think a lot of people going into this 2021 season after no baseball on the minor league side in 2020, and then a lot of question marks coming into 2021 about what was minor league baseball going to look like with the COVID protocols, what was going to be allowed on the fan side for how many people can be brought in. Some teams that were able to not be forced out with all the realignment in minor league baseball. They didn't even carry broadcasting anymore. So I wasn't sure what the New Hampshire situation was going to look like, but Tyler, again, all kudos to him for figuring out a way to bring me on so I could still call some baseball games. And, I'm just super grateful for it. As I've kind of said, a lot of times throughout this interview, like, I've just always been grateful for the opportunities that come my way because you just never know. It's a tough business. And, to be able to call AA baseball, step up from the Dash, which was high A, to see how the AA world runs itself, which I would say it's like a little bit more beefed up than it was at the high level, is really cool. It's just, I'm just thankful for Tyler in that sense for bringing me on, and Bob Littman, who's been great, Nathan Strauss, who's another member of the crew. He's a college student at UMass. He's been doing great work for the Fisher Cats. So we've all kind of like worked in tandem with each other to put together, a great product for recaps and the broadcast side. And, I'm excited to do some games in September. I'm going to be doing a series at Reading, helping out at home as well, to just kind of finish out the season. But yeah, it's been awesome. And to see the type of, prospects that have been with the Fisher Cats, with the Blue Jays have coming up. I mean, there are some really great players on this team, like Jordan Groshans, Otto Lopez. A couple guys got traded for Jose Barrios with the Twins, and Austin Martin, Simeon Woods Richardson. So it's kind of cool to see, a big impact trade in the big leagues that involved some minor league guys that were with the Fisher Cats. And that's what's so cool about the minor leagues, is like, you just get to see how these guys really impact the big league level, whether it's with the teams they come up with or being traded in one way or another.
What has it been like, of course, going on the road to cover versus, obviously, you just said you haven't got that experience at home yet, but what was that experience like going on the road?
Well, the experience on the road was a lot of fun. I got to go to the Somerset Patriots Stadium, which for me was really cool. And that was the thing that COVID took away, was I was supposed to work with the Trenton Thunder in 2020, and that was going to be really neat for me. I grew up a Yankee fan, one, but two, I grew up in Jersey. So I was finally going to have this opportunity to broadcast in New Jersey. I was, as I've said, I was so grateful to get all these opportunities in North Carolina, but I had never had a chance to broadcast my home state. And so going to Somerset and calling games at the Stadium of the Patriots, which was a place that was only 25 minutes away from my house. I used to go to Somerset Patriots games as a kid, was really cool. And I was just really happy to be behind a mic again, calling some baseball. So it was a lot of fun. It was a little surreal again, just as a kid, having gone there as a fan several times to then be able to broadcast. And then, to see these upcoming players with the Yankees too, guys in their system, that was a lot of fun. You lose your, I wouldn't say I've lost my fandom as a Yankee fan, because I still root for the Yankees, and, pull for them and watch their games. But it was really neat to go and see some guys that actually a couple months later made it to the big leagues. People in Yankee land love Luis Heel. He's made, I think, 3 starts at this point, and he has an ERA of 0. And I saw him in May and at the AA level, and he was dealing. And I remember telling myself, yeah, this guy's pretty good. And not to say I'm a super scout, but I could tell he had something that could maybe translate to the big leagues. And so that was a lot of fun. But I just think calling the games was for me something that made me really happy, just to get back in that realm of doing, because I think all of us in the broadcasting world that had broadcasting sort of taken away from us during the time of COVID, once you finally get back on the air, it's just such a relief. And also just, it's like an outpouring of emotion, going on inside your head of like, I'm just so glad I get to do this again, because I think everybody that was in that realm, in their houses, isolating for months on end, or just quarantining, or just being safe, but also having no games to broadcast. It was a question of like, wow, am I, when is this ever going to come back and be normal? And it's not normal yet, especially with cases going up again. But I think for anybody that had a lot of time off doing it and then kind of getting behind a mic again professionally, it meant a lot to them to be able to do it again. And for me, that's how I felt, with no 2020 season. And then, going into 2021 with a different kind of role that I used to have in the minor league world. I was just so happy to be behind a mic again.
What are some of your favorite catchphrases that you use during your play-by-play?
I wouldn't say I have a ton, but I do say at the end of games, and that's the ball game. I always think that like it's good to have like an ender to a game, to kind of like just put a bow on it. Growing up in the New Jersey area, I think I took something away from the two baseball broadcasters that were on the air. So yeah, John Sterling with the Yankees, the Yankees win. The Yankees win. I don't think that's a shtick that I think only he can do well. But I also like what Howie Rose did with the Mets and does with the Mets. Put it in the books. That's his thing. At the end of a game. And I just think like having something like that is pretty cool. So I mean, mine's really simple, but I like saying, and that's the ball game. It's something I say at the end of every game, just to kind of put a period on it. Hey, listen, it's over now. So I like saying that a lot. Home run calls, I just always want to nail it. I don't have a specific home run call. Maybe that's something down the line in my career that I'll come up with. But as of now, I just kind of go back and forth between like, that ball's gone way out of here, whatever fits. I think just whatever fits. And then sometimes I'll kind of throw in a thing here or there. This one's really plagiarizing, but I do think that Bob Uecker's a couple grand slams and they're back in it is hilarious. So sometimes I'll say that, if it's like a 12-0 game, you think about like, oh, a couple grand slams right back in it, something a little sarcastic, but if a game is really out of hand, it's something I may fit in there every once in a while. But yeah, and not a ton now, but I do think having something at the end is something that I've tried to do with that's the ball game. When I was a student, I used to say that's it and that's all. It felt a little Looney Tunesy, I think. That's all, folks. I changed it to just that's the ball and that's the ball game, which is a little bit more simplistic, and maybe I'll come up with something a little bit more creative as time goes on. But I like having something at the end to just say, okay, here's the period to the entire story of the game, and just kind of putting a bow on it.
Of course, what is something that you learned now that you didn't know before broadcasting?
That's a great question. One thing that you learn just being in the industry is you need to have persistence, and you have to just find a way to move forward anytime you feel down about where you are. Because I think if you listen to any broadcaster's story of how they get to, getting that major league job, and I'm not there yet. I'm definitely not there yet. But I think one thing I've learned in just listening to people's stories about the broadcasting world is that they sort of hit a point where there's frustration about where they are and, if they really have a future in it. And I just think it's something that, as long as you can somehow make it work financially, because I think the financial part of it is always something that's real, and you have to be able to navigate. And it's a shame that more people don't try to get into broadcasting because they see the financial limitation, especially when you start out. But I think the thing about broadcasting is that just about everybody hits this point of like, what am I doing? Should I keep doing this? And I've been at it now for 6 years, and even when things were going well in Winston-Salem, I think I had like some thoughts of like, okay, how do I move forward? Am I good enough to do this? You just have to like push forward every time you have a feeling like that of, do I belong? Am I good enough? If you believe you are, keep going. Just keep going until, you decide you can't do it anymore, or somebody says you can't do it anymore. And even if they say that, try to keep going further. I think the one thing you're told a ton in school is that this business requires persistence, but it's not something you realize until you're actually in it. Like, you need to like be in it and then have experiences to really realize what your professors are saying, or anybody else that tells you, hey, broadcasting's a tough racket. It is, it is, but I also think there's nothing like it. And so if you love it, try to find a way to do it. Again, it's sometimes not that simple, because sometimes there are financial limitations, and sometimes people just have to move on from a financial standpoint. But if you can make it work somehow, and you enjoy doing it, you think you can advance, and you're not discouraged, you got to keep moving forward. And even if you are discouraged, but you still love it, and you can make it work with your lifestyle, try to keep moving forward. And I think that's the tough thing about the business, because it's not like other fields where it's like, okay, you do this, then you get to that. As I'm sure you've heard, Brandon, from like so many people you've talked to, like everybody has a different path. And I think you just have to come to terms with that and find your path. And again, that in itself is something that requires persistence. So if you have it and you want to keep moving forward, you have to go ahead. But I think that's something you just don't quite realize enough until you're actually a professional broadcaster and you're at a school, and like you have to figure it out yourself. You don't have a senior year to kind of use as filler time. Once you're done with school, it's on you. You got to figure it out.
That's wonderful advice. Where can my listeners find you at on social media?
So you can find me at Joe_Weil. You'll probably see me tweet a lot about baseball. And then I'm also on Instagram too. I think it's Joe Weil 27. But those are the main two spots. My website, joeweilmedia.com. I'm hoping to have that updated as the year goes on. But the Twitter account and the Instagram account, those are where I'm at. And feel free to interact if you have any questions. I always love doing critiques, especially on the baseball side, for people, because I was so lucky to have people do that for me. So if anybody listening to this wants a critique on the baseball stuff, I'd love to give it, because I love baseball. I love baseball play-by-play. And, I had so much help when I was younger and still now on my tape. And I just want to give back any way I can.
Thank you again, Joe Weil, for your interview, and best of luck in your future with the New Hampshire Fisher Cats.
Yes. Thank you so much, Brandon. It's been great to talk to somebody that is in North Carolina. I miss North Carolina a lot. I don't know if you're a big Cookout or Bojangles fan, but I miss both. Whenever I go back, I can't wait to indulge myself with both. But it's been great to chat with you, and congrats on your channel. You've done a lot of great interviews. I feel very spoiled, to be honest with you. So thank you so much.
Thank you. You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Joe, for your interview, and best of luck in your future.
Thank you, Brandon. You as well.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.